investments correctly. So that was my background behind it, and that's when we put it on the market here, the church and the idea, if it ever would sell. We had a couple other churches on the market too, but frankly speaking, I didn't even put much hope into it that we would get somebody until I found out there is a neighbor or somewhere around here that is really interested in it. And some of you wrote me some notes, and some wanted to know why it suddenly came so quick and why we were not told before what all the process was. I have to be honest with you, I didn't know either. I had no idea that it sold until that Wednesday. In fact, congratulations, you have a better pipeline than I do, Chris Howard. I had no idea. I found out from you and that the church was sold, you know. And the reason behind it was, for the longest time, there was an absolute silence. We knew we would work with that neighbors or somewhere, the company that we had here. Sorry?
They're behind us.
Oh, behind you. Okay, we would work there. But nothing moved, and there was no communication with our headquarters, nothing. So I would say about 9 months. It was, in fact, they wrote it off already. They had it filed and said the thing is not working anymore. And then it came up, and with the real estate agent again, and it didn't work out well. And then finally, the owner said to get directly with our organization, and then it went. I must say, in the last 6-8 weeks, probably it went very quick from one moment to another. So, if nothing happens on the other side, I can't report anything. We don't know anything. You talk with Chicago quite often. They had no idea about it.
I didn't know that often, but when I talked to them, they didn't know anything.
They had no idea either.
Yeah,
So that's how it happened. It happened really quick and really fast, and as it is. But it's not something. It's not something that was not on the table.
Yeah.
Everybody realized that that this was a process, that we had it on the market. It's not something that would just come overnight here, that we had not discussed it. So that was the background on it. How and when you look at the sale of the church, please don't look at your rector or the shepherd here, that they are the ones that initiated that here. No, that happened at our level. We discussed it together with them. We came to the conclusion. We agreed on it, and we recommended to our national headquarters here that we put it on sale. So if somebody looks for somebody guilty, I have to raise my hand in this case. So that's where we are. The church got sold, which was step 1. Now we have to look at step 2. But before I go there, you raised your hand. I'm sorry.
Well, you say that you had started discussing this 3 years ago, or started thinking about it back in the office in Chicago or Erie or wherever, and then discussed it with the brothers a year and a half ago, and yet not a word was mentioned to the congregation that this was even in the works.
When
Just a bombshell.
Okay, when bombshell since just a
Last
couple of weeks
Wednesday.
ago? Wednesday. So I need to have these brothers stand up to that because I don't know what the sequence
I made a
was.
presentation to the congregation, I believe it was in March, about the idea of selling the church, and actually we never really got as far as listing the church on the market before the people behind us approached us, because they need more parking, and they saw the property back there, and they need offices, and they saw the property here. Actually, they approached us. But then I made a presentation, I believe it was in March, and talked about what we would do for the future. I brought up these concerns about spending a lot of money on this building, and the idea of maybe renting or buying some kind of commercial property. What he's talking about, say strip mall type property too, I guess you could say, I don't know what you exactly call it. I brought that up and brought up the attendance and the demographics of the area, and left it that we would pray about it and see what the Lord provides. But that was a presentation that was done in March.
But you are right, because a month later we were supposed to have feedback. We never had that meeting. Remember? We had that presentation. No, we did have in March.
Well, no, I know the priest.
But there was never follow-up, and it was just such a shock, to be honest with you, Shepherd, that it was, on the
I'll tell
market.
you in March or April, as far as whether these folks were going to buy it, what little we, I mean, it was very,
When was this? What are you speaking about? When exactly are you speaking about? I'm
I'm
talking
talking about
about...
in March and April and all the way even through the summer, to be honest with you.
No, I wasn't speaking about that. We did, because Sister Hunt mentioned it was a bomb shot, which I understand was a bomb shot. But to me, we did have, I'm acknowledging that we did have a presentation, but we were supposed to have a feedback. Was I the only one that heard it?
No.
What's going on? A month later, we were supposed to have feedback. It was not,
Okay,
please, it was not there.
you're right, it probably should have, but even if there's no action, we should have gotten back and say, hey, we don't know anything, just to let you
keep me
know.
posted.
You know, there's no movement on the entire thing here, we haven't heard back from them. Really, they could have told you that every month, because from March until
Thank you.
August, September or so, there was absolute silence, you know. There was nothing. But they could have just told you at that point, hey, nothing.
But I do remember some announcements, several announcements that said, we still don't know, we're still praying, we still haven't heard anything. You know, there's really nothing to report. There were several announcements like that.
Okay. Well, and then it's also a matter probably, you know, not everybody's in the same divine services when something happens. That could be too.
Yeah, I perceive differently from you, right?
If I might, I'd like to get a little bit of clarification. You're saying that the church's building is really not worth anything to anybody. It basically has no value unless it's a building that you can dispose of and gain a profit from it. Is that correct?
No, what I'm saying is, let's say if a building, just for hypothetical now, if a building is worth, let's say $500,000, okay, a church building. When we build a church building, usually, you know, we won't get $500,000 out of it if we sell it. In a case like that, here in Pensacola, we wouldn't have gotten the money out of it.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at. It's more feasible to have a strip mall type thing in a wherever that you can sell and gain money
So it's all
on
a business
rather than having a church building.
Yes, you're saying it's business.
That is, and run it more like a business than a church, and it's more money oriented than it is soul oriented.
Profit
No,
oriented.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is,
That's the way it sounds.
okay, well then let me take back and let me explain to you again what I mean. What I mean is, if you have an investment, you got to also make sure, aside from the soul care, that the investment will also stay at least at the amount that you have. Would you agree with me on that? I mean, it's your offerings, right? So
Well, we thought it was anyway.
you thought so, right? I think it is, you know.
Well, evidently it's not that way.
You know, I think I would say, you know, if, let's say if that is at $100,000, an investment actually would only be worth $80,000 in a church building, but you could keep it at $100,000 by being somewhere else. You, as a church, you would have to make a decision. Would that be, in this case, better or not? And it depends on each individual church building that we have.
Well, the same thing holds true with my home. I just built a brand new one. Over $350,000. I can't sell it for that.
Not at the moment.
Not at any moment.
Well,
I'd be lucky to
not at the
get
moment.
$200,000 out of it. So I've already lost $150,000 just by signing on the dotted line saying it's mine. So, you know, and I'm not looking to make money on my house, but I'm not looking to move my family out of it as a surprise and say, hey, guess what? You're out in 60 days. You know,
We didn't
I
say
wouldn't
that.
do that any. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. I'm